Dear Cops, thank you for looking after us. We are really happy that we've got other families that have gone through the same thing as us. I really enjoy it. Thank you for looking after us and letting us come. Love from Morton.
Hi, I'm joined now by the National President of COPS, Gill Marshall. Gill has very kindly agreed to talk to me today about the charity and its mission to support the families, the bereaved families of fallen officers, and how the Unity Tour kind of links into that mission. Gill, thank you for speaking with me today. Really appreciate your time. So can we start off, if it's okay, with you just telling me a little bit about your very, very personal connection to the charity and how you became involved with it, please?
Yeah, of course. My husband Alan and I were both police officers in Lothian and Borders Police, which is now part of Police Scotland. And Alan, prior to joining the police, was a time-served mechanic and was delighted and super proud when he went into the traffic road policing branch. And that was a job that he loved. Obviously, it meant he was out on the road network. And in 2006, Alan and I were both night shift, and Alan was killed while he worked doing accident investigation at the scene of a road crash, and was killed outright when a vehicle came through the road closure, and he was struck and killed. So at that point in time, we had two little girls. They were aged 2 and 4. So as you might imagine, that's a fairly that event tips your world on its head, in that moment. So while we were sort of going through all the funeral arrangements and kind of just trying to get our heads around what life would look like, I received a letter from the then president of COPS telling me all about this organisation, Care of Police Survivors, and how it would be there to provide support for me and my family, not just myself and the girls, but the wider family as well. And if we were interested in coming along to their summer event, they would be delighted to have us. And I'll be honest, I thought, I can't think of anything worse. Why on earth would you want to go and be surrounded by all these grieving people? However, as I say, that happened back in 2006, and here we are in 2025, and I'm more involved than ever with the charity, having gained so much from it over those intervening 19 and a half years. So it definitely does something right.
I think you've cited the charity with being that kind of springboard that kind of helped you kind of get your life back on track and the girls' life back on track. So you mentioned that summer event. So that's the Survivor weekend, I'm guessing. Yeah. So What was that first Survivors weekend like for you? Again, like you say, it must have been nerve-wracking.
You know, I remember it as being quite possibly one of the longest weekends of my life. My daughter Katie was just 2.5, and she was in the full throes of the terrible twos. You know, so I'm dealing with that. I'm dealing with my own grief, that my extended family are there, so my parents, my mother-in-law, and it was really overwhelming. I think you're just trying to navigate how you react in those situations, because what the weekend does, it sets up lots of opportunities for you to meet lots of people, but it sets them up in a way that allow you to, you know, laugh, cry, have a glass of wine, sit and chat, have a nice meal. So it's, you know, it's set up in a kind of really clever way to make you feel relaxed and comfortable. So you do go through that whole range of emotions, which is you talk about your fallen officer, your loved one, and you tell funny stories and you say, oh, remember when this happened or that happened. So it makes you kind of puts you into a safe space for those conversations. And that's quite odd when you're only sort of 5-6 months in, because up until that point, lots of other people had been a bit scared to sort of talk about, you know, Alan and what had happened. And this was the first time, I guess, that was the whole purpose of why we were there. So it was really quite overwhelming. And I always say to people now, come back again, because it will be easier next time.
Yeah, because I mean, how important do you think that kind of that peer support for survivors is? Because we come back to that whole family word again that I spoke to with Andy about the police family, and I suppose there's a cops family as well, isn't there? From what I gather.
Yeah, no, totally. So I think it works on, again, it's clever. It works on a number of levels. It works on bringing widows together. It works on bringing parents together. It works on bringing kids together, and they all feel that grief slightly differently. So to have that peer support in terms of relationships, and not just the generic, we've lost somebody, you know, that's quite unique and it's really special. And particularly in my case for the kids who were so young, you know, I was always wary that they were the little girls who'd lost their daddy. But when they came to COPS, there was absolutely nothing special about that, which I just loved, because I didn't want them being singled out. And COPS was the one place that didn't happen. And so, you know, that peer support thing is so important. And the other thing that weekend does, and obviously the Unity Tour is a huge part of that now, is it makes families feel like they are still part of the police family. Because sometimes if your officer is the only person that has that connection, it goes. So the fact that, you know, senior police officers are involved, colleagues are involved, hundreds of people in the Unity Tour come along, the vast majority of them are still, you know, connected to the police family. That's hugely important for our survivors as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, like I say, I think sometimes people, particularly members of the public, I guess they don't realise it's not just the officer on duty, it's the family behind that officer. It's, you know, the people who make sacrifices for them to do that. So it's kind of bringing everyone together. And like you say, I like the fact that you say it's the kids, it's the widows, it's everyone together. So in terms of the Unity Tour, though, you're saying that kind of links into it. So have you ridden in the Unity Tour, have you?
No, I have craftily avoided that for a number of years, not for the lack of trying of the Scottish chapter. And maybe once my time as president comes to an end, I'll not have a good excuse to avoid it any longer, because I know how much work and training and dedication that the riders put in. And as I say, having been kind of involved in the running of the weekend for the last few years, I've not really been able to do that, but my excuses might have run out.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll have to try and work on you. So you're going to be there. So this Survivors Weekend this year is in August, isn't it? I think the first weekend of August.
Yeah.
Okay. And are you going to that as well this year? Or?
Yeah, so I'll be down there all weekend. I start my weekend by having a meeting with brand new survivors, people who've never been to that weekend before. And that's something that we've only started doing in the last few years, which is introducing the people coming for the first time to what that weekend looks like, what to expect, and to try and just prepare them for the roller coaster of emotions that will happen. And in particular, on the Saturday afternoon, when the Unity Tour riders first come in and join us at the weekend, that's a moment that, you know, I defy even the hardest hearted person not to have a bit of a lump in their throat or a tear in their eye. So we try to give them a little heads up about what's going to be happening. So yeah, I'll be down there for the whole weekend, working with the team behind the scenes, and just you know, hopefully touching base with as many old friends and new survivors that come along.
Yeah, and in terms of survivors, I know you said, I think it was a few months after your bereavement that you got involved with COPS, but there's no timeline to it, is there? I mean, if your family member died in service kind of 50 years ago, if you're only just hearing about COPS now, you're welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. So part of my job as president now is where we hear about a death on duty, I immediately contact the force and the family, and we explain what we're all about. And you know, some people, it's just too soon, they want to, you know, come back to us. But you're absolutely right. We do a bit of work in the background looking for families that have perhaps been missed out for whatever reason, or, you know, the force didn't, you know, there wasn't a lot of publicity around about an officer's passing, and perhaps it's just passed them by. But you're right, if we find you, you know, 20 years late, you come along and you still will get something out of it. And obviously COPS has only been around, this is the 21st year, so, you know, we're relatively young, you know, so there'll be people who still benefit hugely despite the fact that people have died a number of years ago. So you know, it is that, unfortunately, the number keeps growing, and that's inevitable, unfortunately, but the charity is flexible in that it just keeps going and morphs into what it needs to be, depending on, you know, what that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of, so the services, apart from the Survivors Weekend, obviously, some of the other services that survivors kind of link in with through COPS, can you kind of talk about? I think there's counselling, isn't there? And
so, as you've said, peer support is at the heart of what we do. So we offer peer support weekends throughout the year. Some of them are for the relationship groups that I've talked about. So, you know, partners and spouses have a weekend, parents, children, siblings, adult children, all that kind of good stuff. So we run those throughout the year. We also run theme weekends, which means that different groups of survivors can come together. And again, that's just to encourage safe spaces for people to get together. We run them up and down the country, try and keep that as flexible and as fair as possible. We offer specialised counselling for both children and adults, that again is free of charge to everybody, and we will offer that to our survivors. We also have access to the Spectrum app, which is a kind of fairly new offering from COPS, but it's just a bit of a wellbeing app that people can access, and it gives them lots of hints and tips, and also links out to additional counselling and medical services should they need that. And then we also have obviously Unity House, which you know, we can discuss a bit further, because that's we've had it a few years, but it's a huge part now of what we can offer to survivors, which we simply wouldn't have been able to do without the Unity Tour.
Yeah, so coming back to Unity House then, so tell me about it. When was it? Is it purely through Unity Tour funds that it's been funded?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Unity Tour, you know, for the last however many years has been a significant source of fundraising for Care Police survivors, and you know, we couldn't be more grateful for the effort, not only of the riders themselves, but the team that make that happen and have done so for years and years. And we got to a point where, I mean, obviously you can imagine that all the weekends and all the online, we kind of do some online support networks as well, which kind of was born out of COVID. I should have mentioned that. But anyway, all these things, in addition to the Survivor Weekend and the theme weekends, you know, cost a lot of money. However, because the Unity Tour have been so incredible at raising money for us, we got to a point of agreeing that we would try and do something sort of really tangible, which we could kind of hold up and say, this is what the Unity Tour achieved for us. And that for us was Unity House. And essentially that's a sort of respite holiday home based in Western Supermare, that families can go to, as I say, to get a little bit of respite. And, you know, it's a huge property, so you can bring all your family together. And the other idea behind the size of it is that families can come as a group, so we can keep that peer support going, and 2 or 3 families or a group of widows or whatever can come and meet at Unity House. And, you know, it's fully kitted out, and people come and they just have a break away from the norm. And that has been entirely funded by the amazing work that the Unity Tour has done over the years. So it's such a unique thing to have. It's an amazing thing to be offering to our survivors, and particularly where maybe in the early days, coming to one of our bigger events at the weekend feels quite overwhelming. That's something we can offer, which is just maybe a little bit gentler, and you can have a bit of time, you know. So it's incredible.
So how do people kind of link in? How would they go about like getting to go to Unity House then? What would they need to do?
So through the COPS, the team in the office, we also have all of our survivors are registered on the COPS portal. We have a little portal on the website which allows them to go in and book all the events that we offer, including Unity House, and there's a kind of calendar which lets you know when it's available for booking and all the rest of it. So really simple. And if technology isn't your thing, a quick call to the team in the office and they'll sort you out with a booking. But yeah, no, it's as I say, it's just such a unique thing to be able to offer. And we did a bit of a vote at the time when we were talking about buying the property, and you know where we would have it, and what worked for most people. And as I say, somewhere down in that neck of the woods kind of seemed to be the favourite, and we were really fortunate to find the property, and we dispatched people to go off and do the tour. And yeah, so here we are, you know.
How much did it cost in the end then, do you think? How much funding do you know?
I would need to double check the figure for you, Rachel, but it's certainly into the hundreds of thousands of pounds, which you know is just, it's incredible to think that we were able to just go and purchase that and have it as a, you know, an asset for the charity, and an asset for our survivors going forward. So I mean, obviously it doesn't come without its ongoing costs, and we need to make sure that we keep it in really good state of repair and all the rest of it. So you know, there's ongoing upkeep and what have you, but yeah, just a phenomenal thing to have for our survivors.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I say, there's so many kind of different branches ways, and like you say, I like the idea that you say it's a little bit more gentle, it's a little bit more personal, and you can just take your time. So yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. But in terms of families or people who are nervous and they just think I couldn't, what would you say to them then? What would you say?
I think it's probably not for me to sell it. I think what happens is people will dip their toe in the water. They will come along. The remembrance service that we have on the Sunday of our annual weekend, every year we read the names of the officers who have either died in that last year or that have become known to us. And often that is the time when families feel they really want to be there. So they will make a special you know, effort to be at that Sunday service. And I think what then happens is they meet other survivors and they start to have those little conversations, and there's something that clicks that sort of says, actually, I might get something out of this. You know, so I think it's about it. Sometimes it's about time, and sometimes it's just about clicking with that one person that says something to you and it really resonates with your situation, and then you come back, and then the next time you're the person that's doing the, oh well, this was my first year last year, and that's how it works, and you become part of that kind of self-fulfilling prophecy of the charity. That's what I got out of my first weekend, despite the fact it was pretty traumatic. What I saw at that first weekend was people who were 5 years down the road and 10 years down the road. And I'm thinking, they actually look okay. They're doing all right, and they're reasonably sane, and they've not all fallen apart. So that for me was hugely important. And so I think when people do put their toe in the water, you know, I hope that's what they see. And I think that's what brings people back again, because they go, there's something about this that will live with me right throughout, you know, my journey of how this plays out for me.
Yeah, and it's that hope, isn't it? They get that glimmer of hope and just, yeah, this, I can do this.
Absolutely. And I think to see some of the other memorial things that happen as well, and cops, you know, I think, so the National Police Memorial Day, which travels around the UK, if you want to go to that because you know your loved one's going to be mentioned about that, that's quite a scary thing. But if you know that some of your cops family, the people you've met, are going to be there, that makes that a little bit easier as well. If you want to go to, you know, some of the other forces have individual services, the chances are you'll see a friendly face, and that's what cops does. It sort of creates those little connections. You know, and it might be that you're a parent, but you know you make really good friends with siblings or whatever. There's no, you know, there's no right or wrong to that. But that, as I say, I think that's what it does. It's the connections, and it's just creating those little opportunities, which mean a lot next time it comes round to getting involved with something.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for talking to me. It's been
You're
really
welcome.
interesting. It's a little bit of an
Good.
insight into the charity and to say how the Unity Tour links in. I'll be riding in the Unity Tour, so
good luck. I will look out
thank
for
you. I'm going to need it. I'm going to need that glass of wine at the end. But yeah, so I will hopefully catch up with you on the weekend. But in the meantime, Gill,
Brilliant.
thank you very, very much, and take
You're
care.
more than welcome. Thank you so much.